Hello Internet, today we are going to be taking a look at SVGs inside of Unity and how I'm going to try to make them useful for me. The problem with SVGs is that they're vector graphics. They're defined by a series of points and not bit data. They don't work like textures where you just have certain pixels with certain colors. Instead, you have geometry, and Unity can't render those. There's no way to display them. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a tool that automatically converts SVGs into our usable assets, probably PNGs. And we're going to use Inkscape for this, but we're going to use the Inkscape CLI as a Unity tool rather than manually going and having to recreate these every single time. I want to create a tool that does it automatically, so I don't need to deal with that. So I have just 4 random things in here. This is just a test just to make sure this works. So we have 4 different things. I'm going to write a tool that crawls over my entire workspace, finds any SVG files, and generates an SVG for them at a specific size with specific parameters. So to do that, we're just going to jump into an editor thing. This project already has an editor folder. What that means is that it's not going to ship with your game. It's just going to be part of the Unity editor. It's going to be there while you're editing your game and working on your project. But if you actually compile and try to ship your game, your editor scripts aren't going to be there. So that isn't required. Another important thing with this is you will need Inkscape installed and you will need it added to your path if you're trying to do this. The path is where your operating system is going to search for executables to run. So you need to configure that so that it can actually find Inkscape. This might already be done for you. You can test that by just opening up a CLI and typing Inkscape, and it should let you know. And then we'll figure out how to do that. There. So if we do Inkscape-help, hopefully this still works. And we'll get some help. What this is going to do is run Inkscape from the CLI and give us a bunch of stuff. You can also use this to launch an actual editor if you actually want to open something up for editing. But in this case, I actually just want to run the rendering process for Inkscape to turn an SVG into a PNG and render it out to a specific image of a specific size. And then that's it. So we're gonna rely on this. So that's everything. There's a bunch of parameters here. We'll come back to this. But for now, let's just create a new thing. So we'll just call this the SVG generator, I think. And I don't remember how to do any of this. So we're going to make this up as we go along. But what we need to do is we need to traverse all of our assets. So only files in our assets. I do not want this to run over my entire file system. I have terabytes of data. And that would be a very long running process if I ran it over my entire operating system, and it wouldn't be very useful. It would also cause a lot of lag and be very slow because I have like asset packs, like icon packs with thousands of these SVGs, and I do not want to generate all of them. That would take up lots and lots of space. So let's open this up in an editor. We should get one eventually. This might take a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to crawl everything. And then after we've crawled and found all the files to process, we're going to start an Inkscape process to render them in place as a different type of file. So in this case, we're going to replace the SVG with .png probably. Inkscape is smart enough to figure that out. So if we actually go and check this out, here's all the things we can do, but we can actually provide an export file name. The file type is guessed from the extension if it's present. So if we provide .png as the extension for our file, what that's going to mean is that we're actually going to generate .png files. And Inkscape is smart enough to know that that's what we intended without us explicitly having to say what the export type is. If you do want to explicitly export a specific type of file, these are the supported formats. So you're welcome to tinker with that as much as you would like. but we're mostly going to be working with the export file name and then a width and a height. So we can actually define the size of the image we're generating. SVGs can be scaled. That's one of the cool things with them. But they don't work well in games. And so this gives us a way to kind of do that and render something that fits our game. If I want to use this for an editor thing, just use them inside of the editor, then I might only need them to be really small icons that are maybe 64 by 64. Or if they're like a big texture or something that I want to place somewhere in my game, that's going to take up a big part of the screen, I might want them to be much, much bigger. So we have lots of options here and we can tweak them pretty quickly. So this is still figuring itself out, it seems like. So there we go. Let's try to get rid of this. Processing files. Cool. So while Writer does its thing, let's create a menu item. So what we're going to do is we don't need to extend a mono behavior. This isn't going to be something attached to an object. This is going to be something that we're going to attach to the Unity header itself. So that header at the top of the editor, we're actually going to place a new menu item there. That's what this does, is it actually creates that menu item for us. So we'll just import that. And then we can give it a name in just a second. But first, let's actually just define this method. So public static void. And this is going to be a static method. I think that's how this works. I always guess at this. I know everything except whether it needs to be static or not. I'm pretty sure static is correct. And then we'll just say generate SVG from menu like that. So what this is going to do is go to a specific path. So I'm going to create a tools section. And then the slashes actually create submenus. So we'll just create generate SVG and debug.log. Hello. So what this is going to do is just show. Yeah, that's probably a bit better. What this is going to do is actually show just a debug message when we run this. This will tell us that it actually ran, that everything's good. And then we can actually implement this. But for now, we just need to actually make sure it worked. So let's go back to our Unity editor, and we already have a new tools menu. So you can see tools was now added to that top bar there. And we now have generate SVGs. And if I run it, we get hello in our console. So everything's working. Now we just need to go and crawl our file system. So what I'm going to do is kind of do this in parts. Again, I want to be very careful that I'm not crawling my entire file system. That would not be what we want. Luckily, we do have some starting points that we can work from. So we can actually use some of the environment variables that are provided to us. So instead of hello, let's go and write out the environment .current directory and figure out where we are. So I believe this should be the top level for the project, which is one directory above our assets menu. So if I go and run this now. Oh, I don't need to run this. Not like that. This is the editor tool. You can see we're in our project here. So inside of my file system at the name of the project, underneath that, there's going to be a number of different things, including the assets directory, which is where all of these project assets are. It's where this whole project directory is. All of those assets are stored there. So we need to jump into that assets directory and then crawl that. So let's do that. Let's go and do file dot. Is there a way to find things? Directory. I think enumerate files should work. Because we can provide it a path. So we're going to go to our custom path. So what I'm going to do is first construct a path. When you're working with paths, it can be really tempting to just do string concatenation and say search directory is equal to environment.current directory plus / assets. And this might work, but it also might not work, because what I don't know is if this current directory has a / at the end of it or not. And that can actually change the meaning of what I'm writing. And so I want to be you want to be really careful when you're writing things like this to avoid that. And so C# provides automatic ways to get around this. So you don't have to worry about if your strings end or start with slashes. It will just figure it out for you. And so instead of doing this, we can do a path.join. There's also path.combine. They work slightly differently. For our use case, it shouldn't matter, but path.join or path.combine. I might leave some, that was weird. I might leave some links down below in the description, kind of going through the differences between those if people are interested. So check that out. But we're just going to go and create a search directory, which is inside of our current directory, combined with the assets directory. And this is going to automatically combine them for us. And then we can just say searching for SVGs in that. And so this is just going to give us a little bit of help to know that we're actually searching for things. Eventually, we're going to add on to this project and probably use the new Unity processing tools, so we can actually have a really fancy display for this and even be able to cancel it. So if it's taking a very long time, like if we accidentally import an entire icon library and start trying to process like 1,000 images, we probably don't want to do that, and we probably don't want it to just keep going, because that will, one, lock up your entire editor for the entire time it's working, and two, generate lots and lots of data that you might not want. So this will give us a way eventually to cancel it, but we don't have that right now. And then we're going to enumerate files in our current path, so our search directory. And I want to search for star.svg. So this is, the star is a wildcard, it's saying match anything. And then .svg, so it's going to find SVG files there. And that should cover everything. So enumerate files is going to basically search the search directory and then find anything that matches the path. It doesn't use regex, I do not believe. It does something else. So let's call this SVG files, so we know what that is. Okay, this autocomplete is really throwing me off. That's okay. For each var SVG file in the SVG files, we're just, for now, before we actually process everything, I just want to write out what we found, so SVG file, to our directory. So this is just going to list these files that we find. So we should get 5 messages, because there's 4 SVG files, plus we have one just saying where we're searching. And this should, the SVG file should give us the full path to that file. And then we'll be able to actually use that and plug that into our tool. And then all we need to do is just swap out the extension, and everything else should work for us. So let's go and run this. And we found nothing. Oh no. Why not? I was missing one thing. Right now, there's 2 ways to run this search. You can run it over the current file, or over the current directory, or you can run it over the recursive, this directory and everything underneath it. So it will open up directories underneath where you're looking. The default behavior is just to open up the current level and search there. So it's just looking in our assets directory and seeing if anything is there. And there is nothing with .svg right here. So it's not finding anything, and then it's just exiting. So to fix that, we need a parameter here. There's an overloaded version that is going to look for all directories. So instead of just looking at the top level directory of wherever we're searching, so in this case, our search directory, just the top level assets folder, instead we need to search all directories. So we can just provide that. That will run through and find everything. And then we can go and plug this in, and hopefully that fixes all of that. And everything should just work now. Let's put that there. We're not actually working in our scenes, so this will hopefully make it a little bit easier. And there we go. So now we get 5 messages. We get our assets, and then we get all 4 of our SVGs inside of that SVGs directory. So now we need to actually edit them. And so what I'm going to do is first find the name. That's the hard part, really, because I know everything else we're just starting to process. So all we need to do is just replace SVG with everything else. We could just do a find and replace SVG. That could lead to some weird behavior. And really, I just want to replace the extension. So var new name equals path dot change extension. And we're going to change the extension of our SVG file and replace it with .png. And I don't think, it's been a while since I've tried this method, but I do not think you need a period here. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, because we're just going to print this out. So SVG file 2, our new name. And now this will give us all the information we need for actually, is this going to work? And hopefully the answer is yes. Because if we get the correct response here, then we can just start our process and do all of that. So let's quickly run this. Yeah, and so that changes from Twitch brands to Twitch brands.png. Perfect. So everything's working. Now we just need to actually run this. So the way to do that is with the process command. Process lets you run processes, and that can be anything. You can start web browsers, you can go and launch command line things, whatever you want. You can also run fun tools like this. So process, I think, equals new process. And we need a few things here that I don't remember. There's 2 ways to run this. There's a process start info and something else. Process.start. There we go. So we have process start info, or I can just provide the file name and the arguments for it. So I can just say run Inkscape with the following arguments. So in this case, what we want is, I believe, we can double check this. So the way this works is you provide the options, and then at the very end, you provide a list of files to operate on. So we could actually provide all of these simultaneously. I don't want to do that because I'm not entirely sure how that would affect the output. So instead, we're going to do them one at a time. That's probably not the best way to do this for a batch type thing. We probably do want to actually just run them all simultaneously because there's only one initialization of Inkscape required in that case. But we're gonna do what works. So we need to have an output and say where it's going. So -o, that's not where that goes. -o with our output directory, which is the new name. We need a width and a height, and I'm just going to say 64 and hard code this for now. We can come back and change this or provide some configuration or something. SVGs also have this somewhat embedded in them already. They have a size information, but usually it's not always going to align with a base 2 multiplier. It might be like base 10. For reasons you probably want to use base 2 stuff. So I think that should work. Let's see what happens. Process dot. I think this will just finish, right? Dot wait for exit, and then yeah, we're good. So wait for exit has 2 options. It has this one, which just is going to infinitely wait until the process exits or is killed, or you can use you can provide a set of milliseconds where it's going to wait for a specific amount of time and then time out. Either one should work, but in this case, we're just going to complete this. This will cause it to wait because we are starting a new process, which means it's going to operate in parallel to everything else that's going on. If we do not do this wait, things will just finish as they finish. And you're just sort of firing and forgetting the generation. That might be what you want. But in this case, I actually do want to know that it finished. So we're going to do that. And then we'll just say debug.log. Job's done. And actually, let's put that all the way down here. Cool. I think that's it. This should work. The only one thing we didn't do is give it the file name. So we just need to provide SVG file as the final parameter here. So the way this works, the way I'm reading this is all the options have to be enumerated first, and then file comes afterwards. So that's what's going on here is we just have our output and then our two size parameters. And then finally, we have the input file. And that should be everything. So let's do this and see what happens. It's going to take a bit. It shouldn't take too much of a bit, I hope. Oops. I expected that to finish faster, so I may have screwed something up, or something else is going on, but we have no way of knowing. It's done. Cool. Nothing's there. Interesting. Oh, there they are. Okay, we just needed to refresh. So we now have all of our files there, and they're all actually generated. So we now have our YouTube, our video, our Twitch, and our GitHub images all generated for us. The default is no alpha transparency or anything like that, but you can change that, and it was an SVG, so it should automatically be ready to support that, because the original SVG was blank. So we can actually use these as transparent things inside of our UI and things like that, which is pretty neat. So yeah, I think that's it. What we do want to do is, you saw it took a little bit of time to actually finish. There's currently no way for us to stop that if we have more than 4 things. That one took 20 seconds, which isn't too bad. But what we're going to do is then add a process thing. So you can see there's a background tasks thing open over here. That will allow us to show the current state of what's actually happening over there, and potentially be able to cancel them. So if a job is taking too long or gets stuck, we can cancel it and pick it up later. I also kind of am curious. I've never worked with them, but I think we could write a custom asset pipeline for this. So if you just drag and drop an SVG into your project, it should automatically render a PNG for you that is ready to use. That's coming up hopefully soon, but that's sort of where I'd like to take this, because I think that would be a really fun way to kind of explore these. But yeah, this is how you can kind of create your own tools for things that you might want to do. The cool thing with this is it automates something that is typically pretty boring, because I would normally have to open all of these up, click export, find a file name that's fairly close, export it, make sure that everything is correct, that the transparency is set up correctly, that the sizes are all correct. And then if I ever need to change anything, I would need to go and redo that for every single thing. Here, if I just want my images to now be, I don't know, 32 by 32, we're done. That's it. That's all you have to do. And then we can come back here and regenerate everything. So I can just do this, click this, and we're done. That's all that I need to do. And this should finish hopefully pretty quick. But that's one of the uses of something like this, is it automates some of that boring stuff that you would have to do, and that's prone to human error. If you might screw this up, might enter the wrong value sometime, that could actually cause issues. This should be consistent. It should always do the same thing. So as long as you have Inkscape installed, it should always be able to regenerate things for you relatively quickly. So there you go. Hopefully this is interesting, and you can use it in your projects. If you do, I would love to hear about it. So leave a comment and let me know what you're doing. Other than that, we'll pick this project up in a little bit and start adding some of those other features that I was talking about. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. So until then, see you, internet.